notification. I got some interesting news, some breaking major development. Alright, today's video is going to be Jerry Rice, wide receiver, Super Bowl legend, three-time Super Bowl champ who played with the 49ers and then got traded to the Oakland Raiders. You know, he's legendary, and it's going to be Battle of the Legends. This one is a hard one to make because you got to do it very carefully. It's going to be Jerry Rice versus Terrell Owens. It's actually funny because both these guys once upon a time were on the same football team, if you can actually believe that. Now, Jerry Rice got drafted in the 1985 NFL draft, and he was selected, I think, 89th in the second round to the San Francisco 49ers, and he was with the legendary great Joe Montana, and he won his first championship in the 1988 Super Bowl. Yeah, because somebody sent me a comment for the last video, or should I say two videos, not the last video, but the video before that, and said that they won 1988, 1989, won back-to-back Super Bowl championships. So he won two championships 2 years in a row. He almost won Rookie of the Year. I'm not sure on that, but he did try to win Rookie of the Year, and somebody beat him out for it. He did win MVP in the season. And then he managed to do something that only a few wide receivers do in the NFL. That is win MVP in the season, Super Bowl MVP, win a Super Bowl, and then turn around and win back-to-back championships in great legendary fashion. Now, he would make like about 5 touchdowns a football game. And then on his best day, he probably would make 6 or 7 touchdowns. He was the first guy to come to practice, just like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and those guys. He would follow the same blueprints to success. First guy to come to the gym, last guy to leave the gym. And he would basically kick ass and take names from there. By the time they approached 1991, 92, they would get beat by the Dallas Cowboys, who went to the Super Bowl. And then they would try again in the 1993-1994 NFL season. By that time, they had Steve Young, and there was a lot of controversial. And they asked him right off the back who he thought was a better quarterback, and he tried his best not to, say, he said with Joe Montana, it's all business and you work and everything's fine. And with Steve Young, he's the young up-and-coming quarterback. He kind of saw right what was actually happening. And then they would go to another Super Bowl, and he would win 3 championships. By this time period, he had been playing 10 years of professional football. 10 to 11 years. And once we got to the 1996, 1997 season, they failed to make playoffs. Like, one of those seasons, they actually would lose to the Green Bay Packers in their second playoff game. And then injuries came up. Joe Montana was injured. Steve Young was injured. Jerry Rice was injured. First time that they had 3 players injured, and they were starters. And all 3 players played injured. And by the time we got to the 1998-1999 NFL season, you could see the writing was on the wall. Now, he had been playing for 13 years. Then by 2000, Joe Montana, got traded. They saw that Steve Young was their future. And Jerry Rice kind of felt that, it was some level of disrespect. They put him on the bench. And the same thing happened to him. Terrell Owens was there, and Terrell Owens was his backup. But Terrell Owens, was the younger guy that they wanted to throw the ball to, so he got dealt to the Oakland Raiders from 2000 to 2004. And by this point, he was now like 37. And he wanted to prove to his former team that he could take the Oakland Raiders to a place they hadn't gone to in a long time. In the first 3 years, the Oakland Raiders won a lot of football games. He would take them from 10 points or 15 points down, and he would make a rally comeback, and they would win these games. And he didn't just do it once, he did it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 8 games, he would make comebacks in 8 games. His first season with the Oakland Raiders. And then they made it to the playoffs and won their first playoff game. And then they managed to somehow win their second playoff game and then got eliminated in the third one. Their second year and their third year, they would lose the second playoff game. And I think by the 4th year that he was with the Raiders, they almost made it to the Super Bowl, except for one problem. 2003, he was injured again. And they made a push for the playoffs. And then in 2004, they won most of their games. You know, he put up Hall of Fame numbers. He beat the 49ers. He beat the Dallas Cowboys. You know, went against his arch rival, Deion Sanders, who also was on the 49ers team when Deion won his second championship, and Jerry Rice won his third title. They were on the same team, amazingly. He beat him, and he decided to retire at the age of 41 years old, somewhere around in there. He retired. They were trying to get him to come back for the 2005 season, but he turned it down and said that he was getting a little older, a little slower, and that he was still having trouble with his shoulder. Had his shoulder not gotten torn in the 2003-2004 season, he might have considered coming back for the 2005 season. So he had from 2000 to 2004, he had that long of a period with the Oakland Raiders, because they would win a lot of football games. Here's this old guy taking on some of these younger players. Like, he would take on Donovan McNabb. He would take on a Terrell Owens. He would take on a Tom Brady and the Patriots. He would take on Randy Moss, which Randy Moss managed to be on that Oakland Raiders team, and he was a mentor to Randy Moss. Like, seriously, he did. And then at the last minute of him contemplating retirement, Jerry Rice said, you know what, why not come back out of retirement? And in 2005, instead of signing with the Raiders, because at that point they chose Randy Moss over Jerry Rice at that moment, and he decided to go play with the Denver Broncos. Then he played with another team after that. So he ended up retiring in 2006. So he came out of retirement at the last minute and played with 2 other football teams. And then around 41, 42 years old, he finally decided to retire once and for all. You know, so that marks his career, that he played about 16, 17 years of professional football. You know, he had done what Dan Marino done. Dan Marino had the record for 18 years in the NFL. Jerry Rice was like right behind him. You know, he did 16, 17 years of professional football. You know, 3 championships, Super Bowl MVP, and, to retire the way he did. He retired and became a commentator and an analyst. Of course, that's it. Now, Terrell Owens kind of came in the 1996 NFL draft. And he was, can't quite remember if he was number 22 or number 23 pick, and drafted to the San Francisco 49ers, where he got to play alongside his childhood hero, Jerry Rice. It's not all the time that you could have a role model, a player that you like, and then out of nowhere you get drafted to the team that your idol is on. He learned a lot from Jerry Rice. He learned how to play on both sides of the football, offense, defense. He got to see how you play a wide receiver's position from Jerry Rice's point of view. He also got to see examples of what you should do and what you should not do. And they did go to a Super Bowl, and he had the privilege to be in the Super Bowl with Jerry Rice, which they lost. And then after being with that team for about 4.5 seasons, they didn't really think they would need Terrell Owens. So they sent Terrell Owens, he demanded a trade, and he got sent to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's when Terrell Owens was in his prime. That's when he called himself T.O. You know, he started winning football games, he started beating teams, and then he was teamed up with Donovan McNabb. You know, he was teamed up with all these other players, and then he finally made it to a Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, but he was injured. And he had a lot of distractions. You know, he was trying to get married. He was trying to do movies and television. He was in there trying to do a TV special with Desperate Housewives. All of that was a distraction. And I think Jerry Rice commented on if he would just separate himself from those distractions, that would have been enough to win the Super Bowl. And then they blamed him for losing the Super Bowl because he was creating too much distractions. You know, so he only ended up playing with the Eagles for about 2 years. But in those 2 years, he put up superstar numbers. He did the same thing Jerry Rice would do. He would win a total of 8 to 9 games when they were down by 15 or 20 points, and he would rally a comeback in 9 games. He would make 5 or 6 touchdowns in a row, steal the ball, pick the ball off. You know, they would send 3 people on him. He outrun all 3 of them. And he was big and strong enough that if he had to, he would just run through your whole entire offense. He didn't care. He would kill your defense when he was on defense. When he was on offense, he would just kill you on offense. And if he had a chance to intercept the ball, he would intercept the ball a total of 7 to 8 times a football game, and then run anywhere from 50 to 100 yards every time he would do that. And when he made it to the Super Bowl, he was doing this injured. Now, the reason why they lost the Super Bowl is because he was injured. He wasn't 100%. Now, the year after they lost the Super Bowl, they made another run at the playoffs. But by then it was too late because he would lose to his former team, the San Francisco 49ers, and then he would get dealt and traded to the Dallas Cowboys after that, where he would play for 3 seasons and then find himself traded once again. Now, when he went to the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys, he was in his prime. But unfortunately, even though he really put up monstrous numbers with the Dallas Cowboys, those 3 years he was with the Dallas Cowboys, they would make the playoffs, and all 3 times with Tony Romo, they would lose. You know, finally he plays at the level that everybody want him to play at, and he loses. And you could see that by the time it was 13, 14 years later, what do you got? He's playing with Chad Okocinco for a season and 2 in the Canadian Bengals, and you could see that ultimately he would get, you know, dealt a bad hand, and ultimately you saw how his career turned out. So yeah, he got to a Super Bowl, but every time he went to a Super Bowl, he lose. Now, who's the better wide receiver? Now, Terrell Owens would probably be a better wide receiver than Jerry Rice because he did put up better numbers. He did play more football games. He did win more football games, but he doesn't have the work ethic that Jerry Rice had. Jerry Rice was that type of guy that would get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and spend 3 hours in the gym looking at film, doing cardio, doing weight training, turning his phone off, being very focused, very driven, was a veteran leader on all the football teams. Why Terrell Owens would go to a gym and work out and look at film, but he still was every now and then distracted by outside occurrences. He loved the movies, the television, he loved the women. And he would win football games, but he didn't complete his task. And towards the end of his football career, he kind of wished that he could have done things a little different. And when he speaks to his mentor, Jerry Rice always thought of him as a great player and thought he would have been better if he was just more disciplined. So I would say if you're talking about crunch time in the 4th quarter, who do you trust with the football? I'm going with Jerry Rice 99.99%. 9 out of 10 times, I'm rolling with Jerry Rice. Even when Jerry Rice got towards the end of his career and he was with the Oakland Raiders, he still put up superstar numbers as if he was in his prime. And even when he played on 2 more teams, again, he put up Hall of Fame numbers. Where in Terrell Owens' case, when he was with the 49ers, he was on the bench hold back from really tapping into his ability. And it wasn't until he got with the Eagles that he could show that he could do the same thing as Jerry Rice. And when he got with the Cowboys, he was really in his prime. But he only had 3 years with the Cowboys, and then he was traded because he couldn't guarantee that he could win a championship with the Cowboys. And he felt had he had more than 3 years, he would have won his 4th season. But it never happened. And by the time he ended up playing with Chad Ochocinco, you could just see he was just towards the end of his career with injuries. And again, he still was into the movies, the television shows, and the girls. And you could see that even then it was still a distraction. Arguments in the locker room, the back talking to the coach and the assistant coach, not wanting to listen to no one on the football field, still wanting to be the player that he wants to be. And you can see that to this very day, that when you look at Terrell Owens, you can tell that is the best player to never win a championship. Where in Jerry Rice's case, if someone asks you between Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens, who would you rather go in the 4th quarter to win a Super Bowl? Jerry Rice.